UFC Fight Night, Hermansson versus Pyfer, full card predictions. Starting at the bottom of the card, making my way to the top as always. First fight of the night here is Daniel Marcos taking on Arichi Lang. I'm going to go with Daniel Marcos to win this fight over Arichi Lang because the main reason I have is Marcos is just a cleaner, more technical striker than the side of Arichi Lang. If you look through Daniel Marcos, his fights, he is 15-0. So obviously, when you look at someone, and he has 8 knockouts and 7 wins coming by decision. Now, the thing with him, though, is he does have some canceled fights. Last fought in July of last year in a fight against Davy Grant. Now, in that Davy Grant fight, I know some people were saying, it was a bad look, the split decision. It should have went to Davy Grant. But at the end of the day, I don't think Davy Grant's a bad fighter. I mean, if you look through Davy Grant's record, he's actually beaten some top 15 guys, and he's had competitive fights versus good competition. Now, look, Grant was losing the Sun South fight before he ended up winning in the third round. He was on his way to losing, but still, he ended up winning that fight, beat Luis Smoka, went to a split with Adrian Yanez. I know Yanez just lost to Jonathan Martinez, but Jonathan Martinez is also a guy that David Grant beat. So, yeah, David Grant, he's lost some fights in the UFC, but he's also been pretty competitive with some decent fighters, some guys that are like pretty solid in the division. So I don't want to hold that too much against Daniel Marcos. He was landing, he's the one that made Davy Grant bleed in that fight. I guess the optics for the judges were that Davy Grant was the one that was taking more damage, even though I thought it definitely could have went to the side of Davy Grant. But regardless of that, if you look through other fights that he's been in, the Simon Oliveira fight, that fight was one-sided traffic. Daniel Marcos just picked him apart, beat him pretty much easily. And in the Contender Series fight, Brandon Lewis, I don't know how his chin held up. He got, front kicked in the face. He got pretty much everything you can imagine, just took a ton of punishment, a ton of damage, went the distance and lost that fight. I think Daniel Marcos is such a much cleaner striker than Richie Lang. I do think Lang has power. He is up at bantamweight. He was fighting at flyweight. But if you look at Richie Lang's record, I mean, this dude has fought, he has some, I guess, decent wins. Johnny Munoz Jr., I guess, I thought Johnny Munoz Jr. would get it done there. Eamon Zahabi got knocked out in a minute. Beat Jay Perrin and Cameron Else, like two not good wins. Like Cameron Else, not UFC caliber. And I believe that was at one. What fight was he at bantamweight for? Was it the? I know he was fighting at flyweight before he ended up moving to bantamweight, but he lost to Cody Durden and Jeff Molina at flyweight. Cameron El Shea Perrin, two of the worst guys on the roster. Eamon Zahabi knocked him out. Eamon Zahabi is nothing special in my opinion. And then Johnny Munoz Jr. also, he beat him, who's a guy who I thought would win, but Munoz is more of a grappler than a striker. So in terms of this matchup, and another thing I have to add that I didn't mention beforehand is in that Jay Perrin fight, in the third round, Jay Perrin was coming back and landing quite a bit on Arichi Lang. He won the third round. So Arichi Lang, a guy that, does have a lot of power, can possibly crack the chin of Daniel Marcos, but Marcos is, as I mentioned a few times now, technical on the feet. I think he's smart with his striking. I think he should get this one done. I think this is a spot for him to not necessarily bounce back because he is coming off of a win in his last fight, but kind of a spot for him to like prove himself because that David Grant fight wasn't really the most special fight. It was a very competitive fight. So if he can establish himself as a much better fighter here than Richie Lang, I think that'll do wonders for him. And I do think he will win this fight. It probably goes a distance. Richie Lang's tough to finish. Only Zahabi did it, but I just see Daniel Marcos being the much better overall striker. Next fight is Hyder Emil versus Fernie Garcia. These odds, I believe, are incorrect. I think the odds are probably flipped. I think Hyder is actually the minus 245 favorite, and Fernie's the underdog. I'm going with Hyder Emil here. Listen, Fernie Garcia is just not good. He just isn't good. I watched Fernie fight. If you look at his previous fights, it's just not. It's just terrible. 10-4, 31 years old. Um, Beat Joshua Weems to get into the UFC. Okay, I mean Joshua Weems is absolutely nothing special. Lost to Journey Newson. Terrible look. Journey Newson has not really, hasn't really shown much in the UFC as far as like he's not beating anyone good. Brady Heastan, young guy, pretty inexperienced guy at the time. Brady Heastan lost to him and lost to Rinny Nakamura. Three losses in a row against guys that are relatively inexperienced. I mean, Journey Newson was 9-3. He had some UFC experience, but Brady Heastan 5-2, and then Rinny Nakamura. They're basically feeding or they're giving Fernie these prospects, kind of knowing that Fernie's not going to do anything. He's low volume. I guess you could say he has a little bit of power, but like he's just not a good fighter in my opinion. He's not a guy that wants to go out there and if he were to go out there and just swing heavy and just pressure for 3 rounds, maybe I would consider him as an underdog, but he's coming off of 3 losses. He's looked terrible in all of his fights. I've seen a few people, not many, picking Fernie Garcia. I just don't get it. I know Hyder is the older guy. Could he be exposed? I think eventually he will be. I think he beats Fernie Garcia. This is up a weight class, by the way, for Fernie. This fight's taking place at 145. Fernie is used to fighting at bantamweight, and he still got ragdolled and beaten up at bantamweight. Imagine what's going to happen here, short notice, up a weight class at 145. I think Hyder's going to press forward, beat him. I've never been a fan of Fernie Garcia. I think Hyder should get this one done. I will say though, Hyder, I believe he's 33. This is his first fight in the UFC. I do believe if he was to fight someone better than Fernie Garcia, I feel like he would lose. But this fight is like, if he loses this fight, he should just get his contract revoked because Fernie Garcia is probably the easiest opponent he'll ever get in the UFC. So I am going to pick Hyder here. However, be careful as far as in the future because if he goes 9-0, if he beats Fernie, goes 9-0, and people start looking at him like a real prospect, I don't know if he is. So that's just my 2 cents there. But I do think Hyder will beat Fernie. Zach Palga versus Bogdan Guskov in the third fight of the night. Now, when I first was looking at these guys, I was initially thinking that Bogdan might be a really good underdog here, but this worries me. 78% of people are on Guskov, and he's still the underdog. So everyone seems to be piling in on Guskov, and I know the line is, kind of getting closer to even, but I haven't seen enough of Guskov for me to say that he's, the Volkan Ozdemir fight. Fair enough. I can't blame him for losing the Volkan Ozdemir fight. Ozdemir is a very seasoned prospect, not seasoned prospect. He's not a prospect. He's just a seasoned UFC veteran at this point. Ozdemir has fought very good competition. Bogdan Guskov was a big step down for Ozdemir, so no shame there. But if you look through the record of Guskov, I mean, who has he beaten? He's beaten pretty much. Look at the records of the guys he's beating: 20-10, 4-1, 7-2. I know you're going to say, what about Zach Palga? He has not a great record either. But if you look at Zach Palga, his losses are to Muhammad Usman and Modestas Bukauskas in a very close fight. The guy, he was winning the Muhammad Usman fight, and that was up a weight class, right? So that was at heavyweight, 265, and he was winning the fight against Muhammad Usman, a much bigger man, a much stronger guy, who eventually got the knockout on him in the second round. But up until that point, if you watch the fight, Zach Palga was outstriking him. He was winning the fight. The Modestas Bukauskas fight, his other loss, very competitive fight. I mean, it was a really close fight, and Modestas won because he just landed a little bit more. Zach Palga tried to hold him up against the cage. That's what he's going to try to do here. He couldn't finish Jordan Wright, which I know everyone's, oh, Jordan Wright sucks. Yeah, Jordan Wright does suck, but the fact that Palga got that one done, Jordan Wright is a known finisher. Jordan Wright is known for, being able to knock guys out, being able to, like, if that's the only thing Jordan Wright can do, but he does try to, like, swing hard and knock you out. And Palga did what he had to do to win that fight. this is another one where Guskov, he's unproven. He's unproven over 3 rounds. If this fight ends in the first round, it'll probably be a Bogdan Guskov finish rather than Palga. So if you're looking to play Guskov, I would recommend playing Guskov knockout prop because I don't see any. I mean, it is MMA, so anything can happen. But at the end of the day, Guskov hasn't shown an ability to be able to beat anyone outside of the knockout. If you look at his record, all of his wins, pretty much all of his wins, 12 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission. He's been the distance once, and he's lost that fight. So if the fight goes the distance, I think Zach Palga will be the clear winner. If the fight ends in the first round, I think Bogdan will be the one to finish it. So really, all it comes down to is, do you believe Guskov will finish Zach Palga in round one? If you believe Guskov will find a finish in round one, then obviously it makes sense to pick him. If not, then you got to side with Zach Palga. I don't think Palga has a terrible chin. He got knocked out once by a guy that was a heavyweight. Now he's at light heavyweight. Could Guskov knock him out? Yes, like it is possible. So I'm not confident in this pick because I know Guskov can knock him out. I know Guskov has the ability to knock him out in the first round. But what if this fight gets into the second round? What if this fight gets into the third round even? I think Guskov's cardio is going to drop off if it does. And I think Palga, he knows this is going to be a war of attrition. All he needs to do is survive 5 minutes. If he survives 5 minutes, I think he takes over this fight. So I'm going to go with Palga with low confidence because I know he can get knocked out by Guskov in the first round. So that's what I'll go for that one. Next is Jeremiah Wells taking on Max Griffin. This is another one where I see a ton of people on the Max Griffin side, the underdog side of Max Griffin. And I get why. I get why people like Griffin. I get why people are, he's 19-10, but he has a 7-8 in the UFC. Not the best UFC record, but he's fought a lot of decent fighters. Michael Morales was his last fight. That was a relatively competitive fight that he did lose. Tim Means, Neil Magny, Carlos Condit. You can scroll down and just see, Colby Covington. He's fought some pretty good guys, and even the guys I didn't mention. You got Alex Morono, Alex Cowboy Oliveira, Kenan Son. Like he's fought some decent guys. You know what I mean? He's definitely fought some decent guys. But in all fairness, he did lose to a lot of those guys. He's 7-8 in the UFC. Jeremiah Wells, I feel like is going to win this fight, and I'll tell you guys why. I think Jeremiah Wells is just too good of a wrestler and just too strong in the grappling department to lose to a guy like Max Griffin. I mean, if Griffin keeps us on the feet, if Griffin keeps this fight on the feet, he's probably going to win. You know what I mean? If Griffin can keep this fight in the striking department and Wells can't take him down, it could get really dangerous for Jeremiah Wells. But we do know a few things about Wells. One, he trains with the Philly guys, right? So he trains with Sean Brady, Joe Pyfer. Joe Pyfer is also the main event of this card, by the way. Obviously, you guys probably knew that, but trains with Pyfer, trains with Sean Brady, trains with Petrosky, a few other guys as well. He trains with good competition, trains with good guys. I think his grappling will be a step ahead here of Max Griffin. Griffin's been taken down by guys that are worse grapplers, worse wrestlers than Wells. Guys that aren't as physically imposing. If you look at Wells and if you watch the way Wells fights, he fights in a very, very physically imposing manner. He's not a guy that's just going to try to point fight you or, he's going to go in there. He's going to try to take you down, blast double, get you up against the cage, basically try to drag you to the ground. He'll do whatever it takes to get you to the ground using a lot of explosiveness. And I think he's a better athlete than Max Griffin. So if he really wants to get those takedowns, he's going to have to work for him because Griffin does have good takedown defense. Griffin is pretty good at defending the wrestling, but I don't think Griffin has fought a guy like Jeremiah Wells who has that he really is just like a freak of nature. Like the guy's just so explosive, so dynamic. His striking is not the greatest, but he does have a lot of power. You've seen in the Court McGee fight. Well, he did knock out Worley Alves. Took down Blood Diamond, submitted him in the first round. Blood Diamond sucks, but still, I mean, look at Charles Racky. He couldn't finish Blood Diamond. Court McGee knocked out Court McGee, beat Matt Semmelsberger. And the thing about the Semmelsberger fight, I know a lot of people are going to look back and say, well, Semmelsberger dropped him. Semmelsberger rocked him. You know what I mean? Yes, Semmelsberger did, clip him a few times and drop him, but Wells still got the takedowns. He got dropped, he got rocked, and he still was able to take down Semmelsberger. Now, Semmelsberger isn't known for being, having a high fight IQ. In fact, his fight IQ isn't really the best. That's kind of why he loses a lot of fights. Low fight IQ, not the best takedown defense, but if you're rocked and if you're hurt and you can still get takedowns, that shows that you're not going to quit on yourself. You're going to keep going. He's relentless with his takedowns. He's relentless with his pressure as far as grappling pressure. And if Griffin does try to work his way back to his feet once Wells takes him down, I think Wells will just take him down again against the cage, because the Philly guys, one thing that the Philly guys have is very good cage wrestling. Their cage wrestling is very good, and I think Jeremiah Wells will try to utilize that here. One last thing I'll say about Wells is the Carlson Harris fight. That was his first loss in the UFC. He was on his way to beating Carlson Harris. He was on his way to winning that fight. Carlson Harris was getting dominated for 2 rounds, 2 rounds of domination from Wells. Wells took him down. He was on his way to winning that fight. Third round, he was getting a little bit gassed out. He was a little bit tired, shot a sloppy takedown. And, when he was in on the legs, what happened? Carlson Harris wrapped up an anaconda and put Wells to sleep. And that was a great submission win by Carlson Harris. But one thing about Carlson Harris is he's kind of known for that anaconda choke. He's known for, wrapping up those type of submissions. If you look at his record, he's actually beaten some high level guys by submitting them with an anaconda. He beats Saeed with that. Oh, it was a Darce choke, but still, he beat him with one of those chokes too, Christian Aguilera. So he does have wins with anacondas, with Darces. That's something he's known to do. I don't think Max Griffin is going to be, going to be able to submit a guy like Jeremiah Wells. I don't think Max Griffin is as good of a grappler, pure grappler, as Carlson Harris. So I don't think he'll be able to submit him. I think if Wells gets his hands locked, he will take down Max Griffin. On the feet, as I said, if this gets extended on the feet, if Wells can't get the takedowns, I'd be a little bit worried. I'd be, a little bit wary about Wells if he can't get the takedowns here. But from what I've seen, Max Griffin got taken down by Tim Means. He got taken down by Neil Magny. I'm not saying he's getting completely dominated by these guys, but if Tim Means can take you down, if Neil Magny can get to a body lock and take you down, I think Jeremiah Wells can do the same thing. Jeremiah Wells is just, I think he's built different as far as the grappling and wrestling than Neil Magny. So I'm going to go with Jeremiah Wells to get this one done. Spend a little bit of time on this one, or on that one. I won't spend too much time on this one because I think most of you know who I'm going to pick here. Devin Clark versus Marcin Prachnio. I think Marcin Prachnio is one of the worst fighters on the roster, in my opinion. I'm going with Devin Clark. If he loses this fight, I think he should hang up the gloves. If you lose Marcin Prachnio, you're not a UFC fighter, in my opinion. I know Khalil Roundtree lost to Prachnio, but that's a different version of Khalil Roundtree, if we're being honest. That was not the same Khalil Roundtree that fought Anthony Smith. Not even close. Ike Villanueva, another guy who's absolutely atrocious. Ike Villanueva should have never been in the UFC. So that win, whatever, beats William Knight. Man, this guy Prachnio, he's had some good luck. I'll tell you that. He's had some good luck because I don't think he's UFC caliber. I don't think he should be in the company after losing 3 fights in a row when he first gets in the UFC. And those 3 losses, Sam Alvey knocked him out in round 1. Sam Alvey. And then he fights Magomedov Ankalaev. All right, no shame in losing to Magomedov Ankalaev. And then gets finished again in round 1 by Mike Rodriguez. So he's on a 3-fight losing streak, all finishes, and they give him Khalil Roundtree in his next one out, and he wins that one because Khalil Roundtree is just a bit of a, what do you call it, like a bit of a head case. Sometimes he doesn't show up. As good as Roundtree is, on his best night, on Roundtree's best night, he can beat a lot of guys. But on his worst night, he can also lose to a lot of guys, including Marcin Prachnio. So, again, the Ike Villanueva fight doesn't really prove anything to me. Ike Villanueva sucks. Felipe Lins is, if you look at Lins, he's got a decent record. You look at his record, it's like, oh, Lins 17-5. He's beating a lot of older guys. Most of his wins, Maxime Grishin, Oven St. Preux, both older guys in the division that he beat, and he also beat Prachnio. Lost to Bozer and Arlovsky before that. So all in all, basically what I'm saying is I don't think Marcin Prachnio is that good. His chin is definitely a question mark. He's been knocked out many times. So if Devin Clark hits him clean on the chin, I think Devin Clark can knock him out. I also think Devin Clark has a grappling edge. Vitor Petrino absolutely dominated this man on the mat, Marcin Prachnio, and Vitor Petrino actually submitted him. Petrino is not known as a grappler, guys. Petrino is not known to be a grappler, and Petrino dominated him on the mat and made him tap. So if that doesn't say something, then I don't know what will. Clark can wrestle. He can wrestle. Um, I know it says he's fighting out of Albuquerque. He's actually fighting out of Colorado, so he's training up at elevation. I think that's going to be good for him. I think he's going to have good cardio here. In his last few fights, lost to Kennedy and Zetriku. Actually, rocked Kennedy before he lost that fight. So he had Kennedy wobbling in the first round there. Beat Da Un Jung. That's a solid win. Beat Da Un Jung. Lost to Azmat Mirzakhanov. Beat William Knight. Finished him and then lost to Ion Kutalaba. So if you look through Devin Clark's record, I'm not saying he's some amazing fighter, but the guy's losing to pretty solid competition. You know what I mean? Devin Clark's really only losing to guys that are borderline or even in the top 15. As if you look through, just for reference here, I'm going to look through his record just to prove it. Kennedy, borderline top 15 guy. I'm not sure if he's in the rankings, but I know he's around there somewhere. I know he has fought some ranked opponents. Azmat Mirzakhanov's a ranked guy. Ion Kutalaba is a ranked guy. Anthony Smith is a ranked guy. Ryan Span's a ranked guy. Alexander Rakic and Jan Blachowicz are top 5 guys. So Devin Clark's only losing to ranked guys for the most part. Marcin Prachnio has some terrible losses on his record. I don't like his grappling. I don't, sure, he's got some decent kicks and stuff, but is that going to be enough to beat Devin Clark? Because Clark's better, in my opinion, in the grappling. And even in the striking, I think he can win. So I'm going with Devin Clark. I'm telling you, man, if Devin Clark loses this fight, if Marcin Prachnio beats Devin Clark, I think Clark should just retire because he doesn't deserve to be a UFC fighter if he can't beat Marcin Prachnio. I know I sometimes say that. I know, I said the same thing with Hyder against Fernie, but seriously, they're giving these guys not free wins because nothing's ever a free win, but they're giving these guys the easiest possible opponents. Marcin Prachnio and Fernie Garcia are two of the easiest opponents in the UFC. So if you can't beat them, you can't beat anybody. So Devin Clark. Next fight is Loma Lukbonmi versus Bruna Brazil. Ah, man. Before I make the pick, I'll just break these two women down because I really have no confidence in this one. There's some other fights as I mentioned on the card that I have a little bit more conviction with. This one, not so much. I don't think Loma should be this much of a favorite. I do think Loma probably wins the fight, but I mean, if you look through her record, she beat Elise Reed. I mean, all right, Elise Reed has no grappling. And Elise Reed did have a little bit of success on the feet before that. She beat Denise Gomez. That's a good win. The Lupita Godinez, she lost to her. No shame. Beat Sam Hughes and beat Jin Frey to round out her last 5 fights. On the side of Bruna Brazil, her last 5, she fought 2 trash cans on the regional scene. Mardik Mann, who's also garbage. And then she lost to Denise Gomez and beat Shauna Bannon. So I can't trust in Bruna Brazil here. I don't know, sure, the line might be a little bit off because I don't know if Loma deserves to be a huge favorite in this one. Minus 245. I mean, I think it's even heavier. I think it's closer to minus 300 at this point. I don't know if I necessarily agree with minus 300, but I do think Loma probably is a better fighter. I mean, the Shauna Bannon fight left a ton to be desired. Shauna Bannon, come on, Bruno Brazil, it's Shauna Bannon. That's not a good look whatsoever. Losing or beating Shauna Bannon in the manner that she did, which was a relatively competitive fight. So yeah, to me, I'm not super confident in this one. I've said it multiple times now. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. Just for the pick's sake, I'll go with Loma. But would I be surprised if Bruno won? Not at all. Next fight is Timothy Kiwamba versus Balaji Oki. And I'll tell you what, Balaji Oki's contender series fight was a thing of beauty. The guy was just, he hits hard. He hits hard and he throws good combinations. Good combinations, hits hard. This is a short notice fight for Timothy Kiwamba. And this is up a weight class. This is 155. This is a 155 fight. Uh, Timothy Kiwamba, I get why he's taking the fight. He's a little bit younger. He wants to get into the UFC. I do think he actually has a good future in the UFC. I really do. I think Kiwamba's a solid fighter. I think he's got good striking. I think, honestly, he could give Oki a tough fight. But one thing I noticed is, for one, as I mentioned, the weight class differential is going to make a difference here. Oki being the bigger guy, Oki being a guy fighting at lightweight versus Kiwamba moving up in weight on super short notice. So short notice, only a few days notice or a week's notice, however long. Yeah, I think it was under a week. It's only been, I think the fight got announced like a few days ago. So Kiwamba taking on short notice against Balaji. Kiwamba, he actually, he beat Michael Stack in his last one. I actually watched that fight, the Michael Stack fight. I wasn't too impressed. I know he finished him with a head kick. I know it was a solid finish, but he was getting tagged a little bit before that, and that's by a regional guy, a guy that's much less powerful and much worse than Oki. I think if Oki catches Kiwamba on the chin, he might put him out cold. So I'm going to go with Balaji Oki here. I have to see more of these guys. This is one where I haven't. Both these guys haven't really fought the greatest level of competition yet. We don't know where they stand, so I don't. It's another one. I know this card. Some of these fights I'm not really super confident in, but you can't be when you have two guys that are really new, like brand new to the UFC. First fights in the UFC for both of them. Both coming off Kiwamba did have a win over Mateo Vogel in the Contender Series, but he had to fight once more before entering the UFC. And that partly, maybe that's because Kiwamba actually arguably lost to Mateo Vogel. I mean, some people scored it for Vogel. I know the commentary team was thinking that Vogel did enough to win. On the numbers, he did. On the numbers, Kiwamba actually lost to Mateo Vogel, but I don't know. In a fight like this, Oki versus Kiwamba, Oki, the natural guy at the weight class, Kiwamba moving up in weight, short notice fight. I got to go with Oki here. But 25 years old Kiwamba, he's got so much time. Only being 25, give him a few more years, keep improving. I think he could be a solid UFC fighter in a few years. But for now, I have to go with the guy that I know hits hard and I know can really hurt Kiwamba if he touches him. So I'm gonna go with Oki. Next is the featured prelim, and it is Trevin Giles taking on Carlos Prates or Prades. I'm not sure exactly how you pronounce his name, but I'll tell you what. On the Contender Series, that was pretty impressive win for Carlos here. Impressive win on Contender Series. Straight left, dropped his opponent, and it didn't take didn't even need a follow up. Just took one punch to put him down. Second round, first round, he was landing some good shots too. Good knees in the clinch. Keeps his hands down and keeps his chin kind of forward. It is a little bit worrisome, but Trevin Giles isn't really necessarily known for his KO power. Trevin Giles is more so known for he's beaten some decent guys. I mean, he's known for his jab. He will probably try to fight behind the jab here. I just don't know if he'll be able to take what Carlos is going to be throwing at him. And the reason I say that is because he has, it's not like he's getting knocked out in every fight, but he has been knocked out twice. He's been submitted 3 times on top of that. Carlos is actually a black belt, so I don't think Trevin will have a ton of grappling success. Will he be able to take him down? Maybe. I don't know if he'll be able to control him. If you look through the last few fights of Trevin Giles, beaten some decent guys, but Gabriel Bonfim lost to him. Preston Parsons, I mean, Parsons, that fight was a very, very competitive fight. It was back and forth. It was either that, you could give it to the jab of Giles or the grappling and the pace of Parsons. I mean, it depends on who it was close enough that you could argue that either way. Luis Cosi, I mean, the Cosi brothers, not special. Michael Morales and Dricus Duplessis lost to both of them and got finished by both. Um, I don't really, I don't think that's really a too much of a negative. Dricus du Plessis is the current champion. Michael Morales is I don't know if he's top 15 yet, but he's right around that top 15 in the welterweight division. So Roman Dolidze, I'm just going through his record now. Roman Dolidze fight, a bit of a weird one. As we just saw, Roman isn't really. I don't want to say he's a fraud because Roman is. He does have some solid wins on his record, but I don't think that highly of Dolidze as much as some other people. Some other people are super high on Dolidze. I'm not so much. And then if you really look for far enough back, Zach Cummings and Gerald Mearshart submitted him both with guillotines in round 3. So at the end of the day, I think Giles can beat a certain level of competition. I don't think that certain level of competition is Carlos. I think Carlos is just too powerful, too dangerous of a striker for a guy like Trevin Giles. So I do like Carlos. I am going to pick him here to beat the side of Trevin Giles. Opening up the main card, we have Rodolfo Vieira taking on Armen Petrosian. Rodolfo Vieira, Armen Petrosian. Now this one, a lot of people have. I believe it's split. It should be split. 73% of people are picking Petrosian. Wow, that's interesting. I was actually going with Petrosian as well. I picked him last time when the fight was scheduled, so I don't think it would be, it wouldn't make sense for me to kind of go against my own pick. So this is a rebooked fight, so I'm going to take the same side I was initially on, which was Armen. And the reason I'm going with Armen Petrosian is because I know he's lost. I know he lost to Kyle Barallo, and I know he got out grappled there, but Barallo, Vieira's not he's a great grappler, right? His grappling is very high level, very dangerous. So if Vieira gets Petrosian to the ground, I think he's in danger. Quite a bit, quite a lot of it. He's in a lot of danger if Armen gets taken down. But if Vieira is stuck on the feet, he's going to be a sitting duck. He's going to be a fish out of water. Armen on the feet is actually pretty damn good, and Rodolfo Vieira on the feet isn't really special at all. Cody Brundage dropped him on the feet. Cody Brundage actually had an opportunity. Cody Brundage could have won that fight. If Cody Brundage had any semblance of fight IQ, he doesn't. We know Cody Brundage. He is probably the dumbest fighter on the roster. But if he had any fight IQ, he would have beaten Rodolfo Vieira. I mean, all you have to do, Cody Brundage, all he had to do is stop the takedowns. He's a wrestler, right? Brundage is a wrestler. All you have to do is stop the takedowns. Don't pull guillotine on Rodolfo Vieira. I don't understand how Brundage didn't win that fight. He dropped him, right? He rocked Vieira really bad, hurt him really bad, and then he ends up pulling guillotine, puts himself on bottom, and loses the fight. Like, you can't fix stupid. You can't fix stupid. I don't think Petrosian's stupid. I think he knows if he gets taken down, it's going to be big trouble, and he has to do whatever he can to get back up. Not whatever he can, not give up his back, but he has to try to work his way up. Get his back up against the cage, try to work his way up from there. So Vieira's not doesn't take his back right away and try to finish him. If you look through Vieira's record, though, Chris Curtis lost the fight. I think if Petrosian could try to implement a similar game plan to Chris Curtis, not that Vieira's not going to stop trying to take Petrosian down, but I think I think Vieira will get a little bit tired if he's constantly shooting takedown after takedown after takedown, and Petrosian can start landing his strikes in between those takedown attempts. I think Petrosian can do some serious work there. I do think he's tough. He's not going to quit on himself, but he has been beaten before, and there are paths to beat him, mainly by just keeping the fight on the feet and beating him where you're better at. Armen has an advantage on the feet. Vieira has an advantage on the mat. So if Armen can stop the takedowns, he should be able to beat Rodolfo Vieira on the feet there. And really just looking through his record, beats Dustin Stoltzfus, beats Sapperberg Safarov, and loses to Fluffy Hernandez by guillotine. Fluffy Hernandez, very good grappler, very good cardio. So, I mean, it is kind of surprising to see Rodolfo Vieira get submitted by someone, but a guy like Fluffy Hernandez, who's just a cardio monster, it is what it is. So I don't want to hate on him like that because that was also a very high paced grappling affair. But in this one, I think Armin Petrosian can not get submitted and just be able to win a striking fight against Vieira. As I mentioned, though, I'll mention it again. If the fight hits the mat, if Vieira can get the takedowns, he's most likely gonna win the fight. But if Vieira can't get the takedowns and can't control Petrosian on the feet, I think it's probably one way traffic. So striker grappler, you got to go with who you think If you believe in the grappling of Vieira, you got to go with him. If you believe in the striking of Petrosian, you got to go with him. I think Petrosian he's beaten some pretty solid kickboxers. He's beaten some pretty solid strikers. So I do like his striking. I do think on the feet he should clearly win this fight as long as he can stuff the takedowns. Next is Michael Johnson versus Darius Flowers. Um, yeah, I'm going with the underdog here. I'm going with the underdog in Darius Flowers. I think Michael Johnson, he's 21-19. I don't know how I can possibly pick him and not completely hate it. I know Flowers missed weight. Is that a concern? Yes. Flowers missing weight is a concern. He's fought at 185. He's fought at 170. Now he's down to 155. So yeah, I mean, if the fight gets extended, sure, Michael Johnson probably has a pretty good shot because he's been in the UFC forever, but his UFC record is negative. It's like 13-15 or something like that. So he's lost. Michael Johnson has lost a lot of UFC fights, and some of those guys aren't even super high level competition. To be fair, I mean, he's a guy he's beaten some really good guys, and he's also lost the guys that's like, I don't know why, how you lose to guys like that. Um, his last fight, Carlos Diego Ferreira slept him badly, and I mean bad. It was a brutal knockout. And Johnson's what, 37, 38 at this point, 37, soon to be 38. Flowers is only 29 years old. The only problem I have with Flowers really is one, what was cardio look like in the later rounds, and two, if he also the weight disparity, not the weight disparity, but the weight miss. So he missed weight. How is his cardio going to look? There's a few factors on the Flower side which kind of restrict me from wanting to like bet him at plus 105. So I'm probably just gonna just let this one go. But as far as the pick, I'm gonna go with Flowers. Michael Johnson. I just don't know how I can pick a guy that's 21-19, regardless of if he's fought good competition, because he has fought good competition, but he's still 21-19. He's 13-15 in the UFC. He's lost to the Jamie Markey fight. You could argue he could have won that. He beat Alan Patrick, beat Mark Casey. I mean, he's beaten some good guys. I get why people are picking him, but he's also been knocked out multiple times. His chin might be gone. If Darius Flowers touches him one time on the chin, I think Michael Johnson might go to sleep here. So even if Michael Johnson's winning the fight and Flowers just sort of like a big overhand and catches him on the chin, it could be lights out for Michael Johnson. So I got to go with Flowers. I got to go with the younger guy. That's you could tell he's at least trying. He wants to be a UFC fighter. He's cutting the extra weight now to get to 55, even though he missed weight. I still have to go with Flowers. I just can't trust a Michael Johnson at this point. Even though he is skillful, but the record, the age, I have to pick Flowers. I just have to. Next fight on the main card, we have Brad Tavares versus RoboCop Gregory Rodriguez. Oh man, this one, I like RoboCop. I like Gregory Rodriguez because Brad Tavares. One thing with Brad is he does have great takedown defense. That's probably the best aspect of his game. His takedown defense and his overall toughness. Now he has been knocked out a few times. Could he get knocked out here by RoboCop? Possibly. I think that's definitely not something that's completely out of the equation. I don't think Brad Tavares has much power on his end. Tavares isn't really known for being a guy that's knocked a lot of guys out. I mean, he has 5 knockouts on his record out of the what? He's 20-8, and he only has 5 5 of his 20 wins come by way of knockout. So he's not known for his power. The Weidman fight, that certainly left a lot to be desired. He fought an old Chris Weidman. I thought he should have looked a lot better in a fight versus Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman's he's coming back after what, a 2.5 year layoff or something like that. Coming back after a long layoff, bad injury. He was like 39 years old, and he still went the distance with him. Chopped down his leg so much, chopped the leg so much of Weidman, and still couldn't finish him. I don't know. It just that wasn't the greatest. Bruno Silva got knocked out by him in the first rounds. Dricus du Plessis lost to him. Went the distance with him actually. So that loss has actually aged really well. And if you look through his record, I mean, he did also get finished by Shabazi in round one. So just looking through, I think Tavares, he's fought a lot of good guys. He's a good fighter. He really is. I'm not saying he's he's a bad fighter, but he is older. He's 36 years old. He's taken a bit of damage. He's gotten knocked. Not he didn't get knocked out in his last one, but he did get knocked out in the one before that against Bruno Silva. RoboCop does hit pretty hard, and he does do a lot of damage. If he does crack you, and if he does drop Tavares, he will get on top of him and look to either finish the fight with ground and pound or even club and sub. So I think a club and sub is alive for Rodriguez. Rodriguez does have very good grappling. I don't think he'll be able to out wrestle Tavares, but if he does drop him and gets on top, then I could see a submission happening in that realm. Bruno Ferreira, Chidi, Julian Marquez in the Armin Petrosian fight, which, we just talked about Petrosian, really good striker, and that was a competitive fight. That was actually really back and forth. That was a good fight between the RoboCop and Petrosian. So I don't think Tavares knocks him out. I think RoboCop will probably have, not probably, I think he will have the power advantage. I think if the fight goes 3, maybe it gets a little bit interesting, but I still think RoboCop should be the one to get it done. So I'm going to go with Gregory Rodriguez to beat Brad Tavares. Ihor Pateria and Robert Brycek is the next fight. Oh, man, dude. It just, I've looked through some of these fights and I'm like, what the hell is this card? Ihor Pateria coming off of 2 back-to-back finish losses. Pretty much all of his fights end inside the distance, so I'm not saying why. I'm not acting like that's like a shock. That shouldn't be a shock to anyone. I mean, pretty much all of his fights he gets finished in. He either finishes the fight or he gets finished. So he's a kill or be killed type of fighter. On the side of Robert's also very similar in the fact that a lot of his wins come by way of knockout. This simply, for me, comes down to this is a short notice fight for Ihor Pateria. This is a fight at 185. I know Ihor actually, I think he hit 187 on the scales, so he did miss weight. I'm not sure if he has another chance to weigh in or not, but I don't think that makes much of a difference. Ihor's cutting down to 185 after he's been fighting at 205, so he's been fighting up a weight class. I don't think cutting down in weight to 185 is going to help his chin against a power puncher, a guy that can crack really hard in Robert Brycek. So I'm going to go with Robert Brycek to get the win in the first round. I think one of these two guys is going to win in the first round. It's just whoever you think is going to land first. And I think Robert Brycek, he's a guy that should be able to land, the more powerful shots first because Ihor is coming down in weight, has been finishing his last 2. Although the Bellato fight, he actually nearly had Bellato, like he hurt Bellato badly, nearly had him out of there, nearly won the Bellato fight. But, like I said, short notice, has to cut to 185, has been knocked out before, hasn't beaten a great level of competition. I mean, his best win on his record is old Shogun in his retirement fight. You could tell Shogun was just there. I mean, he was just there to, I guess, fight out his contract, fight his last fight. He didn't take it seriously. He looked way out of shape. And he was still landing on Ihor. I know Ihor, finished him. I know Ihor dropped him, but he landed some good shots on Ihor before he got finished. So I just think a guy like Robert Brycek will be able to do something very similar. So I'm going to go with Robert Brycek to beat Ihor Pateria. Very volatile fight, very volatile. This could end, it probably will end very early in the first round. One of these guys is going to sleep. Co-main event of the evening, we have 50K Dan Ige versus Andre Touchy-Feely. I picked Andre Feely in his last fight. I can't pick him here, though, because I think Dan Ige is another one of those guys who only loses to top-level competition. That's not the only reason I'm picking him. I think Ige it has a better chin. I think if these guys get into a firefight, I think Ige will be the one that will hurt Feely more than Feely will hurt him. Feely does have power in his own right. He is a good fighter in his own right. But Dan Ige, in my opinion, is the better fighter. If you look through Dan Ige's record, Ige's done very well in the UFC. He's 9-6 in the UFC, and all of his losses are to top 5 level guys, or at least top 10. I'll say top 10. Bryce Mitchell's top 10, regardless of getting knocked out by Emmett. Josh Emmett's also top 10. Movsar Evloev is probably going to fight for the title after the Ilya versus Volkanovski fight. Korean Zombie, he's a top 10 guy. Calvin Kattar, top 10 guy. So I know he lost to Julio Arce back in the day in 2018, but really all of Ige's losses come to top 10 competition, and he's been fighting very good guys. And the guys that aren't top 10, he beats Nate Landwehr, Damon Jackson, Gavin Tucker. I know he had a split against Edson Barboza, Mirsad Bektic, but all the guys that aren't necessarily on that next level, I believe, are guys that Ige can beat. Andre Feely, good fighter, definitely has some, there is some danger. He did just knock out Lucas Almeida in his last one. Lucas Almeida is a bit of a fraud if I'm being honest. Nathaniel Wood, the loss to that loss hasn't, that's not a great loss. Wood's a good fighter. He really is a solid fighter, but Nathaniel Wood is a bantamweight. He's a small 145er, so I don't like that loss. Bill Algeo, he squeaked away a split. Joe Anderson Brito, that was a vicious knockout. First round. If you look through his record, he's had some pretty close fights. I mean, split loss to Michael Johnson, split win over Dennis Bermudez, Artem Lowe. Like, I don't know. Something about Feely. I don't think he's bad. I just think Ige is the guy that can definitely knock him out if he lands on him. And I don't see Feely having too much grappling success. The guys that have grappling success against Dan Ige are typically some of the guys that beat him. I know there are some guys that aren't really grapplers that beat him as well, but for the most part, I mean, Bryce Mitchell, Movsar Evloev, Korean Zombie are 3 guys that had grappling success that beat him. But a lot of the other fights, if you don't have grappling success against him, it is relatively competitive. The Josh Emmett fight was close. I know that some people thought that maybe Emmett didn't deserve the win. The Kattar fight, Kattar's a good striker as well. Kattar's probably a better striker, in my opinion, than Andre Feely. So ultimately, I'm going to go with Dan Ige. I do think this is also a buy low spot on Ige. Philly's good. He is good. So I'm not going to completely count him out. Like, the guy definitely has, he deserves to be in a spot like this. He deserves to be fighting a guy, taking a step up and fighting a guy like Dan Ige again. Not again, but you guys know what I mean. He deserves to be fighting like a ranked opponent. But I just think Ige has what it takes to win. Training out of a great gym. Both guys are out of good gyms, to be fair. Andre Feely, Team Alpha Male. Dan Ige, Extreme Couture. I like Extreme Couture striking over. I do like Team Alpha Male's grappling. I do think they have some really good prospects, but I just think Dan Ige, him training with some of the guys that he's training with at Extreme, will definitely help his striking. Not that he really needs a ton of help because he already is pretty good in striking, but I am going to go with Dan Ige to get this one done. And lastly, but certainly not least, the main event of the evening, we have Joe Pyfer versus Jack Hermansson. And I'm going to tell you guys what. I think this man right here, Joe Pyfer, is a future UFC champion. I'm calling it now. I might have said it beforehand. I'm not sure if I've said it in previous videos. I'm not sure if I said it in the Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight, but I will say it here. Joe Pyfer's unranked. This is his first ranked opponent. So I'm going to say it before, so no one can say that no one can say that I'm full of shit or anything like that. I think Joe Pyfer will be a future champion in this division. I think he's destined to be a champion. He's just a guy that I think has the skill set to become a world champion at middleweight. The reason being, one is his power. His power is probably one of the best at middleweight. I know, you can say, oh, what about there's other guys, there's Cannonier. There's some other guys that hit really hard, but Joe Pyfer, when he hits people, they like there's a look that they have in their eye that like, oh, I don't want to get hit by this guy again. Gerald Mearshart, he got hit once, one clean shot from Pyfer, and Mearshart was done. He didn't want to fight. He didn't get knocked out. He covered up. He did not want to fight. One punch, and he quit because that's how powerful Joe Pyfer is. He did not want to fight after he got hit by Joe Pyfer. The Alan Amidovsky fight. I know, Amidovsky's not that great. He's nowhere close to Jack Hermansson's level. I get it, but still, lands clean on Amidovsky. Amidovsky didn't know where he was. He was like, "Whoa, that hurt me bad," and Pyfer followed up and finished him. The Ozzy Diaz fight. Beautiful left hook, beautiful, perfect shot right on the chin. Dropped Diaz, had him rocked bad, and then finished the fight with ground and pound. Like the guy is just vicious with his power. And just outside of the power, you look at the Abdul Razak Al Hassan fight, and you see that the guy doesn't need to win by knockout. I mean, most of his fights he wins by knockout, but if he doesn't knock you out, he can take you down. You know what I mean? Abdul isn't known as like some great grappler or anything like that, but to be able to take down a guy that's built like Abdul Razak Al Hassan and like pick him up, slam him down and then submit him on top of that, like Joe Piper's a dangerous man. Jack Hermansson, I don't think he's dangerous anywhere except for you could say, oh, the grappling. Okay, he heel hooked Kelvin Gastelum 5 years ago. So does that mean he's going to do the same to Pyfer? I doubt it. Last fight lost to Roman Dolidze, low fight IQ, very very stupid move from Jack Hermansson. Why would you take down Roman Dolidze? That's what he wants you to do. That's his only real path to victory in that fight. Jack Hermansson should have won the Dolidze fight, but he just showed that his fight IQ is negative. So in terms of fight IQ, Hermansson has negative because he decided to grapple with one of the best grapplers in the division, and really just in general one of the best grapplers. I don't know, in the sport, but Roman Dolidze is a very high level grappler, and Hermansson decided it would be a smart idea to take him down. Chris Curtis fight, I don't see Pyfer doing that. I don't see Pyfer just not being able to find Hermansson because Hermansson's dancing on the outside of the cage or around the outside. I don't think Hermansson's just going to be able to outpoint Pyfer by dancing his way on the outside. Who else did he fight? Sean Strickland. Shouldn't have been a split. He lost to Sean Strickland. Let's be real. He lost clearly. It should not have been a split. The Edmund Shabazian fight. Shabazian's not Joe Pyfer. And Marvin Vettori. This is the last one I'll say about Hermansson. The Marvin Vettori fight is what made me so confident in Joe Pyfer. The Marvin Vettori fight is why I'm super confident in Pyfer. Marvin Vettori, who's not known to be powerful. Vettori does have a very good chin. He's got decent grappling, and he's a guy that will, keep bringing the fight. He's not going to quit. Like, he's a tough guy, Vettori. Like, he's a good fighter, but Vettori's not known for his power. If Vettori can drop, and he dropped Hermansson and hurt him badly, if Vettori's dropping you, imagine what Pyfer can do if he lands one clean shot. All it takes is one with Pyfer. Hermansson got dropped by Vettori. That's pretty much all I needed to see for me to want to pick Pyfer here, because I don't think the grappling is going to go in Hermansson's favor. I think Piper's like too strong, too big, trains with too good too good of grapplers. His training partners, as far as grappling, are better than Jack Hermansson. His power, he has way more of it than Jack Hermansson. I just think this is a Joe Pyfer spot. I really do, and I think he's a future champion in this division. So I'm going with Joe Pyfer. Probably first or second round knockout is my prediction for that one. And that rounds off the card. I know I picked a lot of favorites. I know, but I have to just be honest with what I see. I can't just pick guys who I don't think are going to win. If I like a lot of underdogs, I'll pick them. If not, I got to pick who I like. So there are the picks for you guys. I thank you guys very much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next one.